I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Summer.
And you're listening to Broke and Broken.
Because we're both.
The podcast about living your best life by getting real.
Hey, broken people. Today we have Eric J. Gates. He's an artist and a mental health advocate. But before we go into the interview with him, Stephanie and I wanted to go over some things with the listeners. We get a lot of feedback from listeners, but we recently got a message asking us if we provide mental health referrals for healthcare. Stephanie and I are not healthcare providers. We are not qualified to do that. And so, no, we do not.
But we're big supporters.
Yes, we do encourage you to get mental health, to make use of referral lines that are out there. I know Oklahoma has the 211 resource line where you can call and get referrals. I believe every state has a line like that. So
yes.
Reach out and find help, but a podcast or a Facebook page is probably not your best go-to on that. But there are all these apps popping up where you can text with licensed therapists and things like that, which I find interesting. I haven't utilized one yet, but make sure whoever your provider is that a licensed healthcare provider. Don't just seek out strangers on the internet.
Don't just seek out strangers on the internet. Don't assume that your pastor, or don't assume that they have had education in order to help them best meet somebody's needs. So
right, if you're needing counseling, you need somebody who has clinical training and knowledge. And my therapist, she actually recommends, don't just look at their diploma or whatever they say their credentials are. Actually go online to whatever the licensing board is in your state and check and make sure their license is valid and that they are active, because there are cases where people set themselves out as therapists who have no training and they can do a lot of harm.
So, but we wanted to talk about self-care today. This was a topic I've been discussing with Summer quite a bit, because we often hear from people that are friends or in the community who are in crisis. And the reality is that everybody in life is going to deal with crisis situations. And so we want to talk about ways to navigate them successfully.
Okay, so what do you want to start with?
Well, I actually sat down. Can you believe me? I prepared myself today.
Of course you did. You always do. She's like hyper organized and obsessively prepared always. Well, I'm winging it, and you can tell.
Normally winging it, but
I think first thing about self-care is you need to build your network, and Eric talks about this some in the interview as well. It's very important to get a support system in place, and if you don't already have one, evaluate your support system. And if you don't have a strong one, you don't have supportive people around you, people who can reach out when they can tell something is wrong or you're not doing so well or you're struggling, you need to start building one. Put concerted effort into building one. That's number one. Community is the most important part of self-care.
Yes, and it cannot be one or two or even three people.
No, it needs to be an entire network. It's a community.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I think it would be great for us to talk a little bit about a support system, and if you don't have a support system, ways to go about building one.
Okay, so, I think that's good, because a lot of times when we hear this phrase self-care, there's entire articles and listicles written about it, and they're talking about bubble baths and things like that, which are great if you need to relax or de-stress or whatever. Those things are great, but that is not at all the be all or end all of self-care. And I think that your support system is your primary defense in all of this.
Yes.
So how do you build a support system?
Well, you get out into your community. Let's say, for example, you have somebody who enjoys running, versus simply running alone. They might look and see if there is a group of people that runs, or they may even get involved into the running community. Somebody who is participating in 1Ks or 5Ks or 10Ks, whatever it might be. So looking at your personal interests and getting out into the community and meeting other people who share some of those same interests is one way that I recommend people broaden their support system.
And build relationships with them. It's not enough to just go run the 5K with them. You need to have an an actual relationship. Well, I see that's one thing that's talked about a lot in mental health right now, is because in more recent generations, we talk about the millennials a lot, and I'm an older millennial, is that because of the way our generation has been raised, and we tend to have more superficial relationships, and so a lot of us don't even know how to create those relationships, and you kind of need to learn. And again, therapy.
Well, and people isolate a lot in today's society. Think of, grandparents and how communities were smaller. You were more likely to know the people within the community. When you get into urban areas, that can change profoundly, where people don't know their neighbors whatsoever. Not that that's necessarily necessary.
I don't know my neighbors.
Yes.
No idea. I don't know their names. I don't know what they do. I could have Ted Bundy reincarnated next door. No idea.
Well, I live in a multi-generational home. I actually live in a duplex with my mom, and I wouldn't know my neighbors whatsoever if it weren't for my mother being overtly friendly. So we.
Well, I think it's easier for those of us who grew up with more extended family and same community, in a tighter community. I think it's easier for us to develop relationships because you have had to do that. You've had more different types of relationships and different types of people. But I think it's harder for people who've been, in a smaller group. Families are smaller now. They tend to be nuclear families, and we tend to have, at least in our generation, is when they started being overprotective, even though the statistics didn't bear out the fear. There was, the safeguard the kids and lock them away and don't let them get out in the community or anything like that. And so I think I think all of that plays in how we have this anxiety about people and, getting to know people. And so
people being afraid of their kids walking to the park or walking home from school. And it's utterly absurd, especially when if there's no busing available, because the kid lives half a mile from the school, and this has led to people not wanting to know their neighbors, because let's face it, there are busybodies as well.
I don't want to know my neighbors. I don't want them in my business.
I
create my support system at least a few miles out.
Right. So, it makes sense. So, think about things like
church. If people go to church, that's a good place to learn and build your community, or synagogue, or mosque, or where whatever community,
wherever it might be.
Right.
Absolutely. And if you have children, getting your kids involved in the community can sometimes lead to meeting people as well. So, but I want to talk a little bit more about what typically leads to people seeking referrals for mental health, which would be a crisis situation. So I want to talk about some of the coping mechanisms and things that can be helpful.
Okay.
If you have dealt with any plethora or number of things. Let's talk about, you and I have talked often about therapy, how we think it would be helpful for someone to touch base with a therapist twice a year on the best of year to evaluate what their goals are, what their needs are, and how they're going to meet them, so that they have that person available for when a crisis situation comes. But what are some of the ways to meet people's needs within a crisis situation? I know that I received a lot of help and support from my community. My sister came over, for example, and I needed to leave because there had been a death in the family, and I couldn't for the life of me pack a suitcase. I wasn't really capable of doing it. And oftentimes when there has been a death, people will say, "What do you need?" I don't know what the hell I needed.
I have literally, when my grandfather was dying and I couldn't think, I literally called my friend. She's like my sister. I called her and I said, I have to go to the hospital. I have to plan to stay there for at least a few days, because if he dies, I've also got the funeral. Tell me what I need. because I couldn't process. And she her daughter had been shot several years ago, and so she spent a lot of time in the hospital and doing those trips. So I'm like, I can't think. I just need you to tell me, and I'm going to do exactly what you say.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't get anybody here, but the phone was a lifesaver that day, because she walked me through it, and I made it out there.
Yes, and feeling comfortable with reaching out in that type of situation is priceless. And everybody goes through crisis. Even if you feel like your support system isn't fleshed out well enough to do that, I think that it's entirely understandable. People would make sure, and look at for yourself. Are you eating? Are you sleeping? These are things that we need to think about. And what are some of the measures that indicate for us that you're in a healthy state? I know for me, one of the first things that flies out the window, if I'm not happy, I don't cook. So I'm aware of that. My family's aware of that, and I kind of leave that as a good measuring rod, if you will, for how things are going for me. Because if I'm not able to put those good feelings into my food, I just don't do it.
The measure of how I'm doing is the state of my bedroom, because that's where I live. Like, the rest of the house belongs to the children for the most part. My room is where I live. So if there is just stuff piling up in my room, I mean, of course it's always cluttered because I'm an artist and that's just how my brain works. I can't live with everything perfectly lined out. But like, if I start piling stuff up in the floor, because that drives me crazy. If there's stuff, if there's a mountain of stuff starting to form beside my bed, that means summer's really depressed and not functioning well.
You're getting overwhelmed.
Right. And so people, and I've had friends who had noticed that, and they would, when they'd come over and they'd see it, they were like, are you okay? And so that's really helpful. Start paying attention to the people you love and that you care about, and they'll start having these tells. And when you see it, don't ignore it. Reach out,
Right.
And,
absolutely.
well, of course, when they say, are you okay? It's always, the answer is always yes. Don't ask if you're okay. Just see what you can do to help them.
Or ask a more open-ended question. How are things going for you right now versus are you okay? Because everybody's going to say, yes, I'm okay, because, you're alive and you're walking around, but that's not necessarily.
And you're trying to avoid that conversation, because who wants to have it?
Yes. And be sensitive about where you're having these types of conversations too. So, for the longest time, when people would ask me how I was doing, I would just burst into tears when they asked, because I wasn't doing well. We had 3 deaths back to back. If I could run on autopilot, I was fine. But the reality was, it was really tough there for a while. And so be sensitive about where you're asking those questions too.
Right. And that's why my answer is always, I'm fine. Because if I start having that conversation, I might fall apart. And if I fall apart, I can't function. And I've got all these children who count on me, and I've got these jobs, and I've got all these things that I have to do. I don't have time to fall apart. So that's why I say, just, when it comes to me, don't ask me if I'm okay. Just recognize I'm not okay. And, you're either going to help or you're not.
Yes. Well, and speaking as, a dear friend and a sister, so, when I notice you're not so okay, my goal is then to see how we can, get out and go do something.
That's what I need. I have to have people drag me out of the house, because I'll stay in here. At one point, I know my parents, I didn't find out till later, a friend of the family actually came and told me, he's like, your parents are afraid you have a drinking problem. That's why they keep asking these questions. I'm like, well, why would they think I have a drinking problem? And they said, well, the kids keep saying that you're sleeping a lot more than normal. And you have a bottle of vodka in your closet. And I'm like, well, yeah, I have a bottle of vodka in the closet. That's the only shelf.
In the fridge. You have kids.
Right. I'm like, that's the only shelf high enough that the kids can't get to it. And that same bottle's been there for a long time, because at the time I had a friend who was coming over, and that was his favorite drink. And then after he stopped coming over, I didn't drink it very much, because I'm at the age now where I can get a hangover just from staying up too late. I don't need alcohol. So, So I was like, I was sleeping a lot because I was depressed.
Yes.
It wasn't alcohol.
That's a really good measurement. Mm-hmm.
But so nobody.
Look at your sleep patterns.
Right.
Is it sufficient or is it way too much? That's a really good indicator of somebody's, health in general.
True. And but my point is, don't talk about it to each other if you're not going to bother trying to reach out and see if somebody's okay. So, in short, take care of yourself, people. Build your support system. Seek out those mental health supports that you need and take care of yourself. So, right. So we'll move on to Eric.
All right.
Today we have Eric Gate, and he is, what are you? You're an artist. What all do you do?
I hate calling myself an artist. like I'm more of an expressionist. I like to emote myself, through photography, through poetry, through writing in general. I don't know, I tend to just put my wear my emotions on my sleeves, I guess.
Okay, and you're a comedian too, right?
Yeah, I do stand-up comedy. I do activism. I'm a mental health speaker. So I do all of these things that are very projection oriented, right? Where I'm pushing out or I'm giving in something. And that's the way that I'm trying to kind of embody my life and make the entity of Eric is very, giving and caring and loving and free and open, because part of my story is that I was not like that in the beginning. Okay. Like I started off very shut in and very closed and hurt towards people. I wanted to project pain on the world, right? Misery loves company.
Right.
And so I did a lot of that projecting, and so the rebranding, I guess, of Eric J. Gates is this, compassionate, loving, giving spirit, and that is through my own kind of idea of expression, I guess.
So interesting, you are the first man brave enough to come on this podcast. So far we've only had women willing to interview for us. So
that's
you're
all right.
Our first guy. For everybody taking bets out there, there was a pool going on that in order to find a man who would actually talk on the podcast, I'd end up having to have sex with him. That didn't happen.
Nice.
So I win, you lose.
Yeah. Probably.
So you said you're an activist. Tell us, what do you do?
So I mentioned I was a mental health speaker before.
Right.
There's an organization called NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. They're a grassroots organization. I try not to talk about them too much because I don't want to fully represent them, right? They are their own entity. But I do speak and do training on behalf of them. But before that, well, let me go back because I need to go into my story to tell this thing. And this is all right. So I grew up in a small town in Wyoming, very rural, cowboy, very Christian, conservative, right? And my mind did not always agree with the things that I was seeing and I was doing and I was around. I experienced a lot of trauma as a kid. I was bullied. I was sexually molested. So I wanted to leave that environment. So I joined the Air Force. When I joined the Air Force around that time, I was about 21. 20 when I discovered alcohol, right? Okay. And alcohol took away all that sort of self-loathing and just the shit that was going on inside of me. And so I loved it, and it worked for a while. Alcohol helped me cope for a long time, but then it didn't. And that's when life began to turn. I mean, I became a very seething, hurtful, I would cause fights with my ex-wife just to have an excuse to drink, right? And it all sort of culminated after 2 deployments to Afghanistan. I experienced things in Afghanistan, and just all of this stuff was just in my mind, trauma from my childhood and all of this. And I broke, and my ex, the way that I kind of realized that I was broken and that I needed to repair was she disappeared. One morning I woke up after a bender and she was gone, and I'm fuck, I lost her, there's no, she's gone, there's nothing left. I spent a good hour trying to call her, probably the crazy ex, right? 97 messages, and it was ridiculous. But in that moment I realized no, something's got to change, and that something is me, right? That nothing else is the problem. I have the problem. I need to fix it. The funny part about that story is that she was actually at a garage sale. So she was out garage sailing, and she had the phone in the car, and she didn't care, she didn't think about it. They hadn't left, and I have a 6-year-old son.
So you were panicking, and it wasn't even what you thought it was.
But it still stuck, right?
That's
it still
good.
And because in that moment I was so desperate, I was so lost, and I knew that I needed to get out. So May 9th, 2012, the couple days after that moment, I went to rehab in Wichita Falls, Texas. It was called the Military Heroes Unit, and it really, that's where it kind of first pushed me into compassion and sort of like care work, is, you know, these people who were dealing with a lot of different disorders and a lot of different things on this one unit were having, you know, wonderful, compassionate, caring, loving conversations with people and trying to help them. True compassion, right? Where some of the staff would get hit but still love a person beyond, you know, being physically assaulted. Just blew my mind. And then I started off in AA and NA, and listening to these people and them talk about service work. That is one of the number one tenets of, and I shouldn't be talking about this because anonymity is the whatever, press, radio, and film, blah blah blah. If there's any AA heads out here, you're probably fucking yelling at me right now. I'm sorry. But no, like they taught me this giving, right? This reaping and sowing, like give to get kind of thing. And for me, it was like emotional support, love, and affirmation. When I gave that to people, I started getting it. That then led me down the path to working for the state, Oklahoma Department of Mental Health Services, or ODMH SAS. I never. It's one of the longest ones, right? Like you've got the Department of Health, like you've got the easy ones. ODMH SAS, Substance Abuse Services. There we go. Lord.
They make it so difficult.
Yeah, right? And it's like people with mental illness, you know, like who aren't in the most mental state, like going to ODMH SAS, right?
Yeah,
like,
you're not going to get it.
No, not at all.
Never.
No. But I started off there at the Oklahoma Crisis Recovery Unit on 13th and Lottie, if you know where that is.
I do.
In that, I was one of the caretakers, right? Like I was one of the people that the people were violent and sometimes too, you know, not because they wanted to be, but because of their disorder. Whatever was ailing them was causing that. It was a symptom, you know. Violence is typically a symptom of mental illness. It's not even meant sometimes, right? Like sometimes people can be in a sort of animalistic state. I got bit at the crisis center. Yeah, because this guy was what happened? It doesn't matter. He was in a psychotic episode due to what's the drug that people are smoking? It's like marijuana, but like it's the sprouted with like chemicals.
Like
K2. He'd done K2 and got a bad batch. Yeah. And like he was very primal, right? Like almost like what you would imagine like a caveman. Like communication was very difficult with him. Yeah, we were trying to physically restrain him because he was aggressive towards other clients, and I was restraining him, and he just dropped out of my arms and he bit me right there. It was on 4th of July too. It was for me as a person with PTSD, like I was actually trying to hide from the fireworks.
Right, you're already elevated up here on your anxiety levels.
Yeah, it was an interesting case. But no, like working in that environment like taught me just love for people because of the struggle, right? And so many people struggle, and that's the 1 in 4. Like that just resonates in my mind. 1 in 4 people have some sort of mental health disorder. That is insane to think about, that, you know, 25% of the population at any time is suffering from something, whether it be active psychosis, whether it be major depression. There is a gambit of disorders that people struggle with.
And so that statistic is diagnosable disorders, not just struggling with mental health, because that's a whole other huge segment of the population that we forget about.
Yep. But just it's staggering to think about that and to know that there's so much pain in the world, right? And somebody who, like I said, I'm trying to use compassion as my worldview. I feel it now, right? Like I know what an empath sort of like feels, because I feel the tension sometimes, right? Like I feel the struggle in somebody. My friend was having a bad night, and instead of a photographer, and she was having a bad night, and we did a little mini photo session after she was done singing, and like one of the best pictures that came out of it was one that I emoted her emotions back at her, and you could just see like the struggle in her face, and I blued the picture so that it really gives that moody deepness, right? And like it's a phenomenal picture. I just did one the other night that was more of my projection of feelings onto her. It's like photo, actually she fades away in the photo, like you can see where she disappears and all the rest of the scenery is still there. And I said everything fades, right? Like, and that's sort of my consciousness, is that we're all fading into the nothing, right? Into the void there. I make the joke, so we mentioned me being a comedian. Have you seen the movie Coco?
I have not.
Okay, fuck the movie Coco. That is my joke. Because no, like in the movie, basically the underlying, do you want me to ruin it?
Go ahead and ruin it for me.
It doesn't really ruin it, and listeners, I'm sorry if it kind of ruins ruins it. But like the underlying message is that if you get forgotten in this life, if people don't remember you here, you fade off into the next. Like in the next life, you disappear completely, right? Because you have no conscious tendrilled connection to this world. Yeah.
So you cease to exist.
Yeah, it's a
well, that's depressing.
And it's a kids movie. Like it's powerful.
Let me go take my Zoloft.
Yeah, right. Like just the you know the nihilistic idea, you know the existential idea. I get nihilism is the transverse of that. Sorry, I get confused a lot. But no, like the existential idea that we will cease to be at one point. You know, and like I love comedy. Louis C.K. said it best. He said, "We're all just dead people who haven't died yet." Like the span of existence.
It's true, but
yeah,
it's so depressing.
Yeah, it fucks with you, right? But here's okay. So
I'm just gonna put some vodka in this.
No, go right ahead, right? But Albert Camus kind of countered that in The Myth of Sisyphus when, you know, he said, imagine Sisyphus smiling. Like, even though the struggle happens, even though that we continue to see the bleakness and the darkness that is to come, it's still worth it. It's still worth it in this moment to be here. And that philosophy has saved my life completely. Mm-hmm. Like, I started studying Stoicism and Marcus Aurelius, just like all of these different philosophers and these different thoughts and ideas, right? People have been grappling with this thought forever, right? And that is what basically philosophy is like contemplating the beyond, the existence that we, you know, maintain.
Searching for meaning.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the way that philosophy can change a perspective, can change somebody's outlook, and just give them clarity in life. One of my favorites he's kind of a little unknown one. His name is Diogenes the Cynic. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Okay, so cynicism is kind of an offshoot of Stoicism. Like, to summarize it, Diogenes is this character, like, he's very, like, disassociated from, like, normal culture. Like, at one point, he would masturbate in public, and he would eat and pee and just do whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, he just, they called him the dog, because he would just act very primal and very animalistic. But it was actually sort of a caricature of the true nature of man, right? Like, we're effectively monkeys, right? Like I'm a hairy person because I have animal characteristics, right? Like, I have body hair. I'd use the joke that women shave their bodies to not look like monkeys, right? Like, most women are naturally hairy. Like, we have conditioned ourselves, Victorian age, like, oh, you got to look pretty, you know, you got to be spick and span. And it boggles my mind when we don't look at the natural beauty of something. Like, just that he was showing that this is our trueness, this is who we are. But he had a mind too. I'm all right. Okay. Let's go on to something else.
Let's move on.
No, and
okay, so finish what's the joke about fuck Coco?
Oh, fuck the movie Coco. So, like, no, this movie screws with your mind, and, like, I contemplate it a lot to think about the fact that I want to be remembered. So even before, well, I saw the movie before I became a photographer, but now, like, I'm really, like, in this, like, on my portfolio, it says capture time, witness existence. Like, just this idea that I want to bring about reality, you know, for myself as well as others. I want to make sure that their time and their energy and their essence is being recorded and reported, because that's what we're going to, right? Like, there's a reason that we have digital phone books, you know, and, like, all of this technology and everything is because people call it the singularity, right? When our consciousness will be uploaded probably onto the internet somehow, right? Like, whether it's a version, and that's far beyond. That's, you know, like 2200. Yeah, like, that's beyond what we can see and feel, but it's got to be coming, right? And I like that idea, kind of like just that I could be uploaded to the internet. But then I make a joke about, like, have you ever played the game Fallout?
No. Okay. I've watched my son play
it. So yeah, Fallout, very post-apocalyptic. But what if we're already in the future and we're just reliving our past memories, but we're a circuit board on a dying computer in the apocalypse?
Well, then I want them to give me some better fucking memories.
Right? Yeah, right.
You can make that happen. You can make my day happy. Like, why are you doing this?
No, that's cool. It's if we are arbiters or controllers of our own destiny, like, why do I feel so sad in bed sometimes, right? Like, do you want me to suffer, computer chip? No, and I think they do. That's the joke, is, you know, just that my mind goes to these places, and that it's a possibility, right? It could be possible. I love this shirt. Oh, I'm so glad I wore this shirt.
Yes.
So I'm wearing, for people that are listening, I'm wearing a shirt. It's got 2 cats in a box, and it says "Wanted, Dead or Alive, Schrodinger Cat." And the thought experiment is that, you know, that duality of life, that nothing is certain until it's here, until it's, you know, manifested, right? Like the moment that I'm about to get into does not exist until we get into it, and experiencing existence with people, and like just being able to like live in those moments. And that's why I love music, because like you can get lost in sort of existence with somebody and you'll lose 3 hours of your night, right? Like all of a sudden it's been 3 hours and you're like, where am I? Like, what happened, right? And that's such a wonderful way to participate in life, you know, and I absolutely love it. But no, okay, there's the fuck Coco. So like just that Coco like screws with your mind, and it's a kids movie.
It's a kids movie. I find most kids movies are a little fucked up when you think about them.
Well, like Disney started to go to, okay, now we're going to talk about Disney apparently. Like, so this title will be like Disney
love-hate relationship with Disney.
Yeah. You know what? Like I told you the other night, like I'm a stand-up comedian. The audience is going to hear this eventually. So like I make jokes about my dick, right? Like most
Yes.
and most stand-up comics, like males, you know, cis comics talk about their dick. And
well, men are obsessed with their
yeah,
dick.
and right, like it's a fascination, right? And that's like the proof that like we're still animalistic is like we're sexual creatures, right? Like the men sort of purpose on Earth is to make more things, right? Like we're supposed to be machines. That's why women are so attracted to like very sexy, like strong masculine men, because they can produce many herds of people, right? And that's like the fucking insane part about this.
And hopefully strong people, so you're not have your babies dying.
Yeah, exactly, right? And that's like this prime specimen. I am not the prime specimen. Like I completely understand that I am the thing that, like, if we were in a tribal community, I would get thrown out and killed, right? Like they're like, why are you thinking? Like, don't think, just
stop that thinking.
Yeah, and actually,
Work.
like I gotta come clean. That's not my sort of idea. It's actually this psychologist sort of like joke characterization of our evolution, right? But it's true that we are still these animalistic beings, you know?
Right.
And that's why I think I enjoy sort of the native perspective. The native philosophy is that, you know, we are connected to the earth, right? You know, the earth mother, that our entirety comes from the soil, you know, that we are dust and dirt. And that's going into more and more I forget his name now, man. I have these like moments where like I'm so powerful, and then like I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to finish. Well, that's most of my life, right? It's just like I can't finish.
You're not alone. A lot of men have that problem.
Yeah, especially as I get older, right? Like it's just Carl Sagan. There it is.
Okay.
So I need to make jokes in order to remember things.
There
it's
you
weird.
go.
That's how I fill my time, is by making fun of myself. But no, Carl Sagan said we are all stars, and that like I blog too. I think I mentioned being a writer, and one of my first like blog posts was about connectedness, and the opening line is something to the effect of, Carl Sagan said it best when he said that we are all star stuff, and that had stuck with me for so long, that the same matter that's here is the same stuff that the sun provides its brilliant radiance, especially on today, right? Like, you know, like
it's 100 degrees in Oklahoma.
Yeah, we're all shining bright right now. That's what else? What else can we talk about that's weird?
I don't know. I'm still focused on men being obsessed with their dicks.
Yeah. No, we are. We really are.
I've been awake for 3 hours and I've already had a dick pic sent to me today.
Really?
So I'm just like, my brain is like, really? What is up with you guys?
So
why do men send unsolicited dick pics?
You know what?
Answer this?
No, I cannot answer this. So I have a joke about this.
Oh,
okay. It's somehow the primate known as man has found a way to distinctly capture, magnify, and transmit a single photon of light energy so efficiently that said monkey man can take a grainy picture of his tiny phallus and send it to a stranger. That's the pinnacle of existence, right? That we are at this point where some guy can take a really shitty camera phone and snap a, just blurry picture of his dick and be like, "You want to see that?" Right? That's fucking just obscure to me. Like I do not send dick pics, mostly because I'm embarrassed of my penis, right? Like it is very masculine to, oh, you got to have a big hulking like throbby dick, and I don't have a big hulking throbby dick. I have a dick that looks like a mushroom lost in a forest, right?
Well, most guys who think they do not.
Okay, well, I don't want to prove it to you, but like most no, because I get that a lot.
Most guys who think they have a big
no,
they
yeah,
really
yeah,
do.
yeah, no,
They're lying to
yeah,
themselves.
no, I know, and that's like I'm very practical about my penis, and I mean it's efficient, and I use it the way that I need to, right?
Okay, that's my favorite phrase of the week. Yeah. I'm very practical about my penis.
I am like I understand that it's just like it's a part of my body and it's a function, and it's the way that it should be. I mean, like if I was 110 pounds, I'd have a big penis. Like I literally would. But like on my frame, it looks bad. It does not fit. So yeah, told you I was gonna talk about penis.
It's okay.
Yeah, here we go. No, but I like it because like getting a male perspective, like you said, like it would be hard for a male to come on this. Not hard, but the expectation that a male could come on this, and I mean it is a part of humanity, right? And it's something that I struggle. Well, I'll go back to it's a piece of trauma for me.
Okay.
So when I was a kid, I grew up in a Pentecostal church.
Oh, I am so sorry. Me too.
Don't even touch your dick. Or like Jesus is gonna come fucking flog you, right? Just and
you will die, and all your children will be cursed.
Yes,
and
like very just shameful for having these urges, and I can't stop it, right? Like I think about sex. People think about sex. That's
right. It's
that's
a very human thing.
Yeah, it's a very human thing. We kind of polarize it when we say that only men think about sex. No, I know some pretty dirty women. Right?
Oh yeah. I mean that's social conditioning meant to control women.
Mm-hmm.
We think about sex just as much as you guys
do. And it's appropriate for you to think about sex, right? Because again, our purpose, our sort of like livelihood on this planet is to populate the world. I don't necessarily your previous episode about polyamory, like I don't believe in necessary monogamy. I think we need people to fulfill roles in our life. Sometimes it's sexual, right? Sometimes you need somebody that you can just, go and do things with.
Right.
But sometimes you need somebody that, fulfills that part of your brain, and they don't have to be the same person.
It's not always the same people. Yeah. That's my theory. I don't necessarily believe in polyamory as, these identical relationships with different people. No. I don't think that works. But I think the always for everybody, because everybody's different, your needs are different. Yeah. And I feel like when you try to force people into those roles, that's when you create tension that doesn't need to be there. There's no reason for it. So if we break out of the expectation on what should be and what relationships should look like, we can be a lot happier, because like you said, those roles can be filled by different people, and that's perfectly okay. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I feel like it's a more stable existence, because then if you lose one of those people, that's the only gap you need to fill. Mm-hmm. Your entire existence didn't just cave in on you.
Yep. Two things. All right. I have a friend, her name is Jill Amos. She's the peer support director, which is what I was in I don't think I mentioned that earlier. It's the job that I did in the state hospital and in the crisis recovery unit, and I did it at the VA in an outpatient setting. But she said, stop shoulding on yourself.
Oh, yes.
And I don't know if it's hers original, but it's wonderful. Just like we should on ourselves so much. You should do this. You should. And it becomes, hard to especially, like for me, I'm somebody who has a very critical perspective on myself. Shoulding is a very bad thing. And the second one, I did a little kind of group session or thing. And what we did is we took a string and we would, one person held it and then they passed it to somebody. We would throw a string at somebody and then they would say something encouraging and throw it they would say you have a wonderful voice, and I would throw you the string, and then you would look at somebody else and you would throw them and you would say something, project a positivity onto their life, and you just keep going and going and going, and pretty soon you build this web, right?
Okay.
You build this web and this connection, this support structure, and then the leader, they cut it, and when they cut one of the strings, the whole thing didn't fall, right? Like everything was so interconnected and so entwined that it supported the broken string. And that is what we need as people, right? We need many connections of different, and varying connections, right? Like that's why I don't believe in monogamy so much. We don't need homogeny. We don't need the same thing over and over again. I think there's a biblical verse where it says man cannot live on bread. Yeah, I think it's bread and milk alone. Yeah, bread and milk alone. Just this very bland diet does not fulfill you. We as machines need protein and carbohydrates and all of these different chemicals in order to maintain our existence. So yeah, I look at these things and I see it as a web, right? And that's why I like building connections, and that's why I'm pulling myself out of a dark depression and trying to build connections. And for me, that's going up to people and saying like, hey, I really appreciate you. Like just like the way that, the way that you, like, I love singers. Like, I love the way that they can project themselves through song, and you can feel their emotions sometimes. And it's like the way that you capture the audience and the way that you project yourself is incredible, and I love it, right? Yeah, and just speaking affirmations into people's lives of positivity, goes back to my, my introduction, where I said, I want to be a light, right? I want to be a positive, glowing entity, so that hopefully others will feel that brilliance and that radiance. It's hard sometimes. It really is.
It can take a lot out of you.
Yeah. And like I'm finding now, like I met a narcissist that kind of took advantage of me, right? And
as they do.
Yeah, and that's like, that was, well, but it was like a lesson for me in, that was you, right? That was you, Eric. You were, I have a friend, his name is Steve, recovering alcoholic. I shouldn't probably talk about that, but whatever. I think it helps bring about the story. But he said, Eric, we were takers. When we were drinking, we were taking from life and from existence, from people. Now we need to be givers. And again, that is, going back to what I said, like, I want to be a giver. I want to give. I want to radiate and project positivity at times. Now, I do get dark, and I do talk about that, but the reason I talk about the darkness is to show you that there is light, right? Like, I have to address the bad in order to highlight the good.
And I think that's good, because a lot of people feel very alone in their struggle.
Yeah.
Because, I've been talking about this stuff openly for a few years now, but I remember before that how very alone you feel, and very isolated. Nobody understands this. And I know I get feedback from that a lot. And that's part of what led to the podcast.
That's so cool. No, I like it. I fell in love with your concept when you pitched it to me, because that's what I want to do, is destigmatize. So viewers can't see, I'm wearing a bracelet. It's hashtag no more shame. It came from, I think it's the Treatment Centers of America, if I remember right, thetreatmentcenter.com. But they had this promotion a couple years back that, talked about destigmatizing, talking about it being open. And that was a kind of a push for me in what I do. That's why I worked with NAMI in the program. In the VA, it was really like this weird like role where I was acting as not therapist, but like supporter, encourager. I don't even know how to explain it, but like I would almost do therapy with people, and one of the things that I would do is I would model it, right? Like, I would do the thing. And there was a class that I developed called My Story, and what I wanted, what kind of my goal with that was getting the veterans open in sharing their struggles, right? In whatever capacity, if it's just talking with your family about it, right? Or if it is becoming speakers, and actually, like, I was encouraging them, like if you guys can speak about it publicly, do it. Like, find those opportunities, because it is so fulfilling when somebody comes up to you and says, I struggle too. Right. And that's like transparency. I said it before we started, but like, I want to live as transparent and as open as possible, as raw and as real as I can be, because to me, hiding is lying, and I can't lie. Like, I cannot, like lying for me builds a world of broken pieces, or like, going back to the web analogy, like lying to me cuts the middle, right? Like, it'll break all those connections, right? Because when you lie to somebody, when you're not truthful to them, and they learn about it, or they feel it, or they think it, like, it ruins a relationship. And I don't want to ever ruin another relationship. I've trashed enough of those already in my life. I'm good. Yeah.
Not setting out to do that anymore.
No, not
That's
at all.
Good.
Not at all. I don't want to hurt people. I want to make people. I want to leave people better than I found them. That's my goal.
I think that's a good goal.
Yeah. Into the story of kind of why I'm coming out of depression now. I was working at the VA. My ex and I were on the ropes. Like, we were getting, well, like, I had a breakdown and abandoned the relationship, basically. I mean, both parties were involved, and but I take the blame a lot, because that's what I do to myself. But I couldn't handle in that relationship. She had like she didn't connect to me anymore because of what I had done, and I get it, right? Like, the compassionate side of me like looks it back, and I'm like, yeah, you were fucking terrible. Like, and there's a reason that she doesn't like you anymore, right? It sucks, because I want to try to rekindle or rebuild at least the friendship, but it's not there, and I don't know if it ever will be. But I'm willing, and that's that's what my program tells me, is that you have to clean up your side of the street, not theirs. But I don't remember where I was going with the X. Like I get very
Okay.
yeah I get very momentary. Like, and that's what I want. I want to live my life as much as I can in a moment, right? And be here, because anxiety and depression, like I kind of balance it like this: anxiety is future, depression is past, right? Like we are either so concerned with what's going to happen or what did happen that we're not here in the middle.
Okay,
Actually,
it's an interesting way to.
yeah, there's a
that.
there's a little slogan, AAism, catchphrase that they say: if you have one foot in tomorrow and one foot in yesterday, you're shitting on the present. Yeah, but it struck me so wonderfully. I was like, yeah, like if I'm not available, if I'm not in this moment, right? Like you're not getting a relationship out of it. You're not getting a connection out of it. You're not getting your side out of it, right? Because I am so focused somewhere else, and my mind already does enough focusing on other things that I want to be present. And yeah,
Right.
that's my whole goal, is just to be in the moment, in that energy. But yeah, like, okay, so the story is that divorce was coming. We had just like had a rough patch, and actually, like, and this is part of trauma, is I left her on the tail of a miscarriage.
Oh.
Like the trail end of a miscarriage was kind of the like, because I'd promised her a kid because I didn't really want kids, and there's this whole long story, and like this could be like a 6-hour podcast, just me. This is therapy, right? Like
It's
you're
fine.
basically a therapist.
Yes.
I left her on the tail end of a miscarriage, which still haunts me to think about, like leaving her in that vulnerable, right, like hurt moment. I mean, she lost a child. It was atrocious, but it sparked that I'm not happy in this relationship, and I can't be in this relationship. You know, I need to go. I need to be somewhere else. And I sought out emotional support through another person, but I had to go. I had to be gone. And there was that, and then that all pushed up into a culmination of, like, at the VA, like stress at work, like working in the federal system. Like we talked about being in the state. Like I can't do bureaucracy.
It's a nightmare.
I cannot no, like if you tell me we can't do something because that's the way that it is, I call bullshit. I'm like, no, we can change it. We, like, change is possible. Change happens.
Right.
It's necessary. And yeah, like it frustrated me, and I would take my work home and all of this other stuff. So I broke, and I actually went into Griffin Memorial. Do you know that?
Yes,
Yeah.
I know where
I went
Griffin
into
is.
Griffin for just a week, just to kind of reset medications, reset my mind. But in there, I met this girl, and I cannot remember her name, but very sweet and very, very innocent. But she dealt with schizophrenia and a very severe, like she could not function mostly. She had psychotic episodes all the time. Even the medication that they were giving her was not as effective as it could be. It helped a little bit, but she would still, like, have these sort of moments. And everybody, not everybody, but most people that live with schizophrenia deal with something, right? Like,
Right.
even if the medication helped, it doesn't help fully. That's like, like narcotics, pain management doesn't completely get away with the, calm the pain, but it knocks it down to tolerable rates. And that's what, was hopeful for her, but she didn't. She couldn't find it. Fast forward, I don't even know. It had to be 2 years. I was driving down Penn and 36th, and I look out the window and I see her, and she's tattered, no bra, yoga pants. There's a big old hole, and I stop and I was like, "Hey, like, do you remember me? We were in Griffin together." And she was like, "Yeah, I do." And I was like, "I want to get you help. You look like you need help. What's going on?" And I mean, she was in her, kind of psychotic state, and she couldn't trust me. She knew she knew me, right? And that's like, my grandma's going through Alzheimer's right now, and she knows things. She can kind of connect with them, but they won't send, or they won't reach.
Right.
Like, my aunt just went to see my grandma, and my grandma recognized my cousin, who's about my age. We're about the same age. But when my aunt went up to her and I was like, "Hey, Mom, do you remember me?" She's like, "No."
No.
Yeah. But once she kind of did connect, she said, Sheila, you grew up, right? And that's it's crazy to me to think that some people live in sort of this like altered reality where she doesn't see my Aunt Sheila now. She sees the little girl that she raised, right? And that's, I get it, right? And that's where the girl, I think her name was Allison. I'll just say Allison for ease. That's where Allison was at. Is she knew me. She knew she could trust me, but she couldn't. Probably a voice or whatever was going on inside of her was saying no, don't do it. And like I was like, it was cold outside. I mean, she didn't have like enough clothing, and I was like let me buy you a coffee, right? Like, let me do something, let me help you. And I did eventually call the police and try to like help her that way, but she got spooked and ran off, right? And just this like this very like hurtful scenario where I care about this person because I've seen them in their worst, and I've seen them in their state, and I want to get them out of it. I want to help her. It still hurts me, right? And that's like, I live with a lot of trauma. My past haunts me at times, but through therapy, through just working on myself and writing and journaling and all that stuff, which is the my story thing, going back to the working in that. And this is where I pick up. Like, once I get on a trail, then I can kind of, oh yeah, we were talking about this, oh yeah, we were talking about this. But the my story thing was a way to write your trauma, right? Like, my grandpa died when I was 16, and I never really got to we were never expressive or but I loved my grandpa, right? And he was like the major male sort of role model in my life. And so when I was in that class in my story, I wrote a letter to him, and it was very deep and very powerful, right? I had my kid at the time, and so like all of these things, all of this hurt and trauma culminated in me just going into this deep dark depression for about a year, like where I didn't really function. I mean, I would like take my son and then we would sit and play video games. I mean, we still sit and play video games because he likes it. But just like not taking care of myself, not showering, not doing the thing, not self-care. And the first spark was my old truck broke down, and I needed money to repair it. I was living off of my disability from the Air Force, and that was okay. That was, it was enough, but I needed to pay for the repairs in my truck. So I signed up for school to go back to school on the GI Bill. And I've just continued that now. And when I was going to school on the GI Bill, and this is kind of like, let's call it the success is hope and the dreams. This is the good part, right? Like, I talked about the bad to now highlight the good of where I am. I am now trying to build this photography business, this artistry that I have, this rebranding of self. I mean, I started a new Instagram page in September, I think it was, when I started it, around the same time that I started my blog. And so like the anniversary of all this stuff is coming up with my 1 year, and I've progressed a lot in a year, right? Like the first picture that I ever posted on my Instagram is a picture of me during a really bad time. Like, you could just see the pain in my eyes. I mean, like, you can still see the pain in my eyes, but I'm addressing it, right? I'm taking care of it. I'm not just pushing it down.
Push it down and hide it.
Yeah, hide it. Conceal, don't feel, to quote Frozen. No, it's
back
true.
to Disney.
Yeah, well, and that's Disney's a part of my life, right? Like, I grew up on Disney, but we talked about it. It's made a turn, and culture's made a turn, I think. Like, to realize, this existential ideal that life is temporary. We don't have much, I mean, yes, we believe in an afterlife, but I don't think that our purpose, if there is an afterlife, is to wait for that, right? Like, I don't like this Puritan ideology of just, struggle until we get to the next place. Like, once we get there, heaven and all this stuff will open up for us. I don't believe in that. I believe that, sort of a reincarnation, karmic type of, like, you work hard and you struggle in this life, you do get more better rewards in the beyond or whatever it is. But I don't know. There's no certainty.
Have you ever seen the movie Black Snake Moan?
Black Snake Moan.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L. Jackson.
And
I have
Christina
not seen
Ricci.
it. No.
Watch it. It's amazing. I tell people when they try to figure me out to watch that movie.
Okay.
Because I'm like, you'll understand PTSD and borderline personality better than than you've ever wanted to.
So thank you for type or access to type of stuff is generally more stigmatized in the mental health community. So I appreciate you talking about borderline personality disorder, because I have tendencies towards an access to diagnosis. Very narcissistic, borderline, dramatic at times. I have these qualities, and I want to lessen them, I guess. So like when other people talk about it, and I know that the struggle is there because I worked with people who I could see it in, and that was the cool thing about, I guess, for the therapy for me in working with people is I get to see kind of where I was and where, like they get to see where they're going.
Right.
So it's this dual relationship that really is wonderful, and it's very helpful. And so no, I appreciate the podcast. Like I appreciate the way that you kind of do that and being open and being expressive, because at times it's hard to talk about.
It is, and I'm from a family, very I'm, a preacher's kid and very, very closed. What happens here stays here. We don't talk about
it's
things.
In the family.
The only emotion that you're allowed to have is anger. And I mean, we weren't told that implicitly. We were told that very clearly and verbally. This is the only, you did not cry, or I'm going to give you something to cry about. Yeah, so so I try to be open, and I purposefully have not told my family about this podcast because I don't want to have this conversation with them.
Yeah.
And when I had a blog for years that I killed about a year ago or so, a year or two. And there was a disclaimer on the blog that said, if I know you in real life, don't read any further. But when you do, against my request, if I haven't talked to you about this, don't bring it up because I don't want to talk to you about this.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Yeah, so I do try to be open about it.
I appreciate it. Actually, and so that's a boundary, right? So in the mental health community, we talk about boundaries. And establishing boundaries is a huge part of recovery, because
if you weren't raised doing it, it's really hard.
People don't tend to respect them.
No, they don't. They try to push them and negotiate them. And...
Well, as a comedian, right? Like I like to push boundaries, and I like to see where the lines are and to see if I can encroach upon them. But I also understand that there is real trauma and there are real requirements for boundaries. And I like, if I do cross them, and purposefully or unpurposefully, like I'm almost repentant, like we talked about, just I don't want to hurt anybody, right? And if that is the case, if that happens, I try my best. So going into kid stuff again, I have a 6-year-old, right? There's a lot of stuff. Have you Daniel Tiger? It's a kind of a spin-off of the Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
I don't.
Okay, so Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood had the little puppets and stuff.
Okay.
Daniel Tiger is a drawing or a animated version of basically like child Mr. Rogers form. Like he has a little sweater vest that he takes off, right? And he's Daniel Tiger. And anyways, they have a song and it's talking about apologies, and it's saying I'm saying I'm sorry is the first part. Then how can I help, right? And that sort of in AA they call it
is it the making amends?
Amends, yeah. like just the the recompense, the bringing about reconciliation, and that is a huge part of recovery is acknowledging that you have caused harm and destruction, but also seeing the harm and destructions that others have caused and how it's manifested in you, right? Because you mentioned not like being emotionally intelligent, let's say, as a child.
Right.
Well, that translates into your modern day, your adult life, and
absolutely.
And this is why the whole men are bad, women are bad. No, we're
all bad. Suck.
Well, we all have trauma.
Yes,
no,
absolutely.
Life
and
is trying.
People hurt people.
Yes. Oh, yes. There was a author that where did I meet him? I met him in training for when I was doing CPR for becoming a peer at the state. And he said that, and it blew my mind, right? The first time I ever heard that, of hurt people do hurt things. Yeah. And misery loves company. That's kind of my analogy of it is I tended to project my feelings or my state onto the world around me because it was easier. It was better. It was easier than dealing with it.
Well, thank you for being willing to
Absolutely.
Do this. And how can people find your art and keep up with what you do?
It depends on what they want. I have things everywhere. This is kind of I do things everywhere. You follow me on Twitter, which is my comedy stuff. I smoke weed, and so the entirety of the comedy or the thing is Highly Tweets. It's at Highly Tweets. tweeting under the influence, and I get high and I just talk about weird shit, or I tweet like it's where I keep all of my jokes for everything. Like there's a lot of midget porn on there right now. Like there's because I'm fascinated by midget porn. But if you want to follow photography side, Instagram is at Eric J. Gates. Like, I don't know if I showed you these. Yeah. Like, I have my whole brand. Like, I have lighters and pens. EricJGates.me will take you to my blog. EricJGates.org will take you to my portfolio. So if you want me, if you want the transparent me, right? If you want the open and, you know, sort of like mental health side or whatever me, that's .me. Okay. If you want the company, the business, the photography side, right? That's .org.
Jekyll and Hyde.
Got here. Yeah. Oh yeah. Very duality, right? Like exactly. I go back to duality. And then Facebook. I don't care. You know, add me on Facebook. Message me. I like to talk with people and learn about people, experience them. You know, because that's what life is. It's about learning and understanding, and for me, learning different perspectives, right? Like you bring something to me now that I told you I had thought about it, contemplated a little bit, but there's a whole world that you do that is unknown to me, and I am, you know, I'm supremely interested in every aspect of culture, right? Like I grew up in a very homogenous white rural community. Like any sort of anything is like fucking magic. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. I don't care. Like Snapchat is. I do a lot of like weird videos. Really? Actually, if you go on my Instagram and look at my stories, a lot of my like highlighted stories are like some of my old jokes and things that I do. Really just weird, obscure, just random shit. But it entertains me, and yeah.
That's what makes life good.
Yep.
You can contact the podcast at brokebrokenpodcast@gmail.com. The Broken Podcast can be found on Twitter at Broke Broken Show, on Instagram and Facebook at Broke Broken Podcast.